Hello everyone, my name is Opeyemi Onibon, and today in organizational behavior we want to look at chapter 4, which talks about individual values, perceptions and reactions. It is important for us to understand organizational behavior because it focuses on studying how people behave at work, and I believe it is important for us to study that because we've been called to lead, we've been called to serve, we've been called to be great people. So it is very important that we grasp the concept of organizational behavior. Now, for today's topic, we want to start with attitude. Attitude is a very big thing. Just as the book says, your perceptions, your values, your attitude influence your behavior. And I love this quote very much from Zig Ziglar, which says that your attitude, not your aptitude, determine your altitude. It means that it doesn't matter if you are the best surgeon, if you are the best student or the best technician, your attitude would only determine how far you can go. If you don't have good attitude, nobody wants to, employ you or deal with you. So we have to make sure we have good attitude. Now, the book explains that attitude is formed through cognition, affect, and intention. Cognition is simply the knowledge a person presumes to have, you know, about somebody. So let's say at your workplace you have a good relationship with a colleague because he or she is, such a nice person, stand for the same values as you stand for. So you are likely to, just like the person. We have affect, which has to do with feelings. Feelings are part of how we express ourselves. We use feelings to express ourselves. They influence attitude, and intention is just a component of attitude that guides your behavior. So basically, with your colleague at work that you like because of one reason or the other, if your colleague should ask you for a favor outside of the work context, you are likely to do them that favor. um, Now, with attitude, we have to understand that it is influenced or affected by many factors, such as cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is simply the incompatibility or the conflict that arises before, two attitudes or a behavior or an attitude. So let's say that you work for a company that uses animal flesh to produce clothing or shoes, and you are somebody who is against animal slaughter. It's gonna cause some cognitive dissonance. And so as a normal person, as a rational person, you want to make some readjustment. So the way you behave will change. So you have to make some decision. And also, attitude is influenced by perception. At work, the book talks about, in the work environment, the books talks about work related attitude, which entails job satisfaction, pretty much the way, the satisfaction you get from your job, the way it adds up value to your life, the way it enhances your skills, the way it influences your attitude, the way it goes with your values. We have organizational commitment that comes in threefold. Affective commitment. Affective commitment is just the connection you have, that strong connection you have with your organization, because they probably stand for the same value you stand for, and so you have that strong connection with your organization. We have normative commitment. Normative commitment is more or less when you find yourself giving back to your organization because they have invested in you. An example of that I found was Centra. Centra is a health related organization that invests in nurses, people who want to have nursing degrees and don't have the means. They would sponsor you, but at the end you have to work for them. Like, you work for them, you stick with them for some time before you can move on to work to with another organization. Then we have continuous commitment that deals with you making an overall decision whether you want to keep going or working with the company. And also employees engagement, whereby as employees in our careers or in our respective jobs, we set goals to ourselves, as to how far we want to go. The organization set goals, and also they have to give us resources, that we would use to achieve those goals, to work properly. So we also need feedback, from peer review from our boss, to know how we are doing. So all those things entails employees engagement, entails how engaged an employee is, in an organization. um, then we have values and emotions. Values and emotions are very important as well. When we talk about organizational behavior, they are part of our life. They are part of our identity as well. Values are those things we set to ourselves. They help us to go through daily lives. And the books talk about terminal values, instrumental values. The terminal values are pretty much those values that you set, is much more personal. You set those values to yourself. People value happiness, relationships, and families, um, prosperity, and all that. And so some values, differ, they varies. And so there can be like worldviews. I see them as worldviews that we use to go through life. Now the instrumental values are simply the preferred means of attending your terminal values. Now we have intrinsic values and extrinsic values. Those are much more work related. Intrinsic values are simply values that are set at work. For example, some employees like to work in a fast paced environment. Some employees like just routine, and some employees, they like to do stuff that challenge them, that help them to get better. And so those are example of intrinsic values. And extrinsic values simply relate to the outcome of just doing work. And we also have to know that with values we may have conflicts, and they come in threefold according to the book. We have intrapersonal value conflicts, where you have a conflict between two values. For example, if you are a family person, you like to spend time with your family, but at the same time you have set yourself to achieve goals in life. To be the best leader, it means you have to work hard. So you have to trade one for the other, or spend less time with your family, and spend more time to work. So that's a conflict right there. We have interpersonal values conflict. Those occur with two different people. I mean, when two people hold two different values. Let's say that you work in the finance department, and you belong to the team that believes in investing, and you work with people, and another colleague that believes in not investing but just spending to get more stuff in the company. So those are example of interpersonal value conflict. Now we have individual organization value conflict, whereby your value conflict with that of the organization. So an example of that is if you believe in fairness and your organization believes in equality. For example, you believe that you put in this a lot of you know effort at work, yet the people who don't put in the same amount of effort get the same benefit. That is a conflict right there, because you believe in fairness. There should be fair to you, not that the other people should not be rewarded, but you should get probably more reward. So that's an example right there. Emotions are intense short-term physiological reactions to a specific object, a person, or a situation. We use emotion to react, to show that we are happy, unhappy. And like I said, emotions are short term, they are directed at somebody or someone, they are experienced, and they can really affect, our attitude or our behavior in the workplace. um, Emotions can also translate into mood, but the thing is, with mood, they are not specifically directed at something, because sometimes you just are not having a good day. Moods can take days, they can take weeks. Moods change a lot, you know. So we also have affect. Affect represent the tendency to experience a particular mood. Affect can be positive or negative. Now, perception. Perception is the process by which we become aware or interpret an information. Two people may have the same information but interpret it differently, and perception can be influenced by attitude, personality, motives, and interests. With perception, sometimes we use perceptual shortcut, you know, to make judgments. For example, the book talks about selective perception that allows us to speed read people. We have stereotyping, that is categorizing people or labeling them based on the single attitude. Stereotyping, those things um, can be dangerous because it prevents us from really knowing who people are. Um, we have errors in perceptions. The books talk about three of them. We have the halo effect, which is forming a general impression about someone based on a single characteristic. So let's say if you had an interaction with somebody and it didn't go well, you begin to form a perception on the person, or you have your general impression on that person. We have the contrast effect, where you compare between two people, you evaluate two people's characteristics, and we have the first impression. First impression happens to us all the time. We always make judgment on first impression. And it has to mostly do with the physique. Often people have told me when they saw me the first time, I looked mean, but after they have interacted with me, they had a complete different view of who I was. Um, so it's very important to be careful of how we value and see people. Um, Now we have to be fair, we have to have trust in our workplace. The book talks about trust, and trust simply is being able to trust people at your workplace. You can't live in fear, so trust is very, very important. Fairness is very important. The book talks about distributive fairness, procedural fairness, and interactional fairness. um, Now let's look at stress. Stress in life is just something you cannot do without. You cannot avoid stress. We go through stress, we go through so much. Is just unpredictable. But stress can be managed if we take it positively, you know. Um Now, the book define stress as a person's adaptive response to a stimulus that places excessive physiological or physical demand on them. So, the book talks about the general adaptation syndrome by Hans Seiley, and he talks about how stress happens. It starts with a stimulus whereby maybe, for example, at your workplace, your boss comes to see you, and he wants you to do something, and you have to meet the deadline. So that begins to you know alert you. You become stressed, and so that is the stressor is called the stressor as well, or the alarm reaction. So in that situation, you begin to resist, and resistance is the next stage. You begin to resist meaning that you have to make a decision. Okay, it means I have to stay late to finish this, I have to meet the deadline. And so it's just the way you manage the stress and get a good result, like you get your work done. And the next stage is the exhaustion stage. The exhaustion stage is when you are not able to do anything, you know, you're not able to get your work done with the stress, because of the stress. um Stress can come in different folds. The book talks about distress and eustress. Distress is when you have an unpleasant stress that leads to a negative event. For example, the loss of a loved one can lead you to stress. Eustress eustress is when you have pleasurable uh, stress that leads to a positive event. So for example, knowing that you are going to have a baby stresses you, is a good thing, but it stresses you just because it's going to change your routine at work and everything. Also in our work, we have stress because of the position we hold. We have different types of stress, you know. Our The book talks about organizational stressors, of course. It has to do with task demand, role demand, interpersonal demand. It's just different things at your workplace that just causes you to stress, and those stress can affect your life. It causes you to have to sleep less. It affects your health. It can cause you to, to decrease your performance. It leads to absenteeism, and all those things again can be managed depending on how we take them. It's not easy. It's not easy. When you are stressed, you just cannot control it. Sometimes it's not easy, but as a Christian, I always remind myself of the Word of God, and it helps me. It helps me to get back on track, not to be burnt out. Now, some let me say, some things we can use for stress management is obviously working out, time management. Manage time, every day, to be able to go through the day smoothly. Attend support groups. Say no when we cannot do some things. Listen to music. At some job you are allowed to listen to music. It depends. And like just trying to create a nice atmosphere around you, to be able to perform well at work. The book talks about institutional programs and collateral programs. Institutional programs are simply the way the work is designed not to make you stressed, and collateral programs are much more like incentive things that are made available at work to just make you, you know s- to just to make you at ease, like building gyms at work, and giving you programs to just be able to manage stress. Overall, stress can be managed. We have to know that stress can be managed. We need to be able to manage, to deal with relationship stress. We cannot let the stuff that happen at home, like in our personal life, to affect our performance at work. So it's very important that we manage stress. Now, I want to leave you with this question. I came across this quote that says that behavior goes where reinforcement follows. Is a quote by Aubrey Daniel, and I would like you to, share some thoughts on it. And also, do you think employers should develop mentorship programs as part of, their strategies to enhance employees' behavior and their overall performance? Thank you for watching.